Louisville. It'll be Darius Perry. The Cardinals trying to improve their point guard play. And the ball finds its way to Nora on the opening possession. Into the post, spinning hook shot, first look for Enoch goes.
I'm telling you, if he plays with a consistent motor, stays out of foul trouble, and finds position offensively, he's as big a matchup problem as anyone in the ACC.
It's plain to the eye that Louisville has a massive athleticism and size and skill edge at basically every position, maybe nowhere more so than with Enoch inside, and nearly a turnover. Chris, turnovers have been a huge problem for these NC Central Eagles.
It's been a huge problem. They're averaging 25 turnovers a game, and it's really their best players. You know, we talked about Randy Miller. He's got 15 turnovers in 3 games. Jeree Blunt, the same thing, 15 turnovers in 3 games. 30 turnovers in 3 games from your 2 best players. It's not going to get it done.
Quarter 3 will not go on a defensive board for Enoch. Chris Mack and his Cardinals playing their 4th game. And he has such exacting standards, does Mack. He was not pleased a couple games ago, emphasized the defensive glass. They cleaned that up against Indiana State. And really, that's the point of these November games, is it not, to fine-tune?
It is, and let's be honest. I mean, they opened with Miami, which didn't provide much resistance, and then their schedule hasn't been the toughest. Never really played a great schedule so far, but I think that was by design. You know, Chris Mack knew he was going to be young in certain spots, wanted to grow some experience early, and it's going to get serious for them in December.
Starts with the game at Michigan and ends at Kentucky.
What a rebound.
There it goes way up for it. Louisville early in this year has been basically the best shooting team in the country. They've been so efficient offensively. Perry, nowhere to go, almost turned it over.
Well, they've shot it at a high percentage. I think the number that Chris Mack, as Mora knocks one down, so effortless. I think the number that Chris Mack probably appreciates the most about his offense is they are averaging 17 assists a game, which is a very high number.
They've shared it and they've knocked it down. He's quick to say, just because we make shots doesn't mean they're good shots, and that was another one of those Eagle turnovers. For Wara, Chris, that look right there is like so many. Smooth in the rhythm of the offense, and it looks effortless for him.
It does. He's a pro. He really is, and the fact that he came back, I thought it was a great decision. And we've talked about his improvement. 5 points a game as a freshman, 17 a game last year. Big reason he was the league's most improved player, and you know, he's letting it come to him.
McMahon is never shy with a trigger, and he knocks down a 3. That dude is instant offense. He has really grown as a guard, and a really good feed, I thought, from Darius Perry. Goes in a hole early. Trying to get their first bucket on the board. That is good, and that stems the tide. A little 3-ball for Justin Watley.
And he's been battling injuries. Didn't even shoot around this morning. He was sitting over on the bench. Although Moten said he's going to play, but it's hampered his ability to stay sharp because he hasn't practiced with the team.
Lavelle was very optimistic about him, said he's one of those guys who doesn't really need to practice. He absorbs it up top, but a poor feed. Nora trying to finish on the alley-oop. He looks a little hobbled on the way back down the court.
I don't know how he didn't separate his shoulder on this. And I'm with you. He looks like he's hobbling on that leg. He's got that sleeve on that left leg.
That's the one guy they cannot afford to lose. Chris Mack, a little grimace on his face. He is watching intently as Wara comes to the free throw line. As you said, Chris, they're without Malik Williams. They're without David Johnson. Both warmed up before the game. Those are 2 key pieces they expect to have back by the end of the month. Very encouraging to see them at least go through the pregame routine.
Let's be clear about this, okay? Like, I think they're the best team in the ACC right now. They're playing the best. They're playing without 2 of their better players. I mean, Malik Williams is as good a defensive frontline player as anybody in the country. And Chris Mack was raving about David Johnson today and what he's going to do for their point guard position. So they're going to get significantly better than they already are.
Yeah, Johnson, a local kid who wowed in the high school ranks. Mora, that one a little bit out of the flow. Good news for Louisville. He does look healthy on the floor. A little blow by Jordan Perkins. And a foul going to go against Mora. Pretty nice answer by North Carolina Central. He goes to cut the lead in half.
When you have a guy like Ryan McMahon who can absolutely knock it down. Look at this baseline.
Back underway inside the Yum Center. We'll get you Jordan Wara in just a moment. North Carolina Central has cut the lead in half. Will Fleming, Chris Spatola inside one of the great arenas in all of basketball. Louisville has gotten some deflections early in this game, and they are playing some frenetic D.
Well, folks know they play that pack line defense. The guards are going to be gapped up. They're going to jump to the ball. They're going to swipe at it. Bigs are going to wall up 17 feet and in, and they are schooled at it. I mean, this is Chris Mack's. So disciplined his teams are defensively. There are rules that are followed. Smokey, this is not Nam. There are rules.
Over the line, please.
So you got the reference.
There's nothing to fear here, Chris. These men are nihilists as Wara is fouled. You know, it's interesting for a team like North Carolina Central. They all understand the point of this game. It's pretty financially important for them to come into buildings like this. Lavelle Moton understands that, but it can be a real opportunity for growth early in the year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, they've been road warriors here. They bust from Akron, played at Akron the other night, did the 5-hour bus ride from there. They've been to Stephen F. Austin already this year. They played USC Upstate at home in Durham, North Carolina. I mean, that's the life of a mid-major.
It is legitimately true that this Louisville team might not spend 5 hours on a bus the entire season combined. They're going from the chartered plane to the hotel. That's their time on the bus. This kid, McMahon, is a very interesting story. It's hard to hit 1-3. Perry been a little bit out of control early in the game. They're trying to find Enoch again, and fouls early for the Eagles. It's a little bit too much size inside.
Well, and it wasn't a great pass, and to be honest, I didn't like the post position. But Watley just a little aggressive, trying to deny the catch.
Mora strong to the rack, and another whistle. And on the road, Lavelle Moton's got to be thinking, we got to be a little bit better defensively, and more importantly, maybe not so quick with the whistle.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he's thinking about that. The fact of the matter is, guarding Jordan Wara, you're guarding an NBA player. And, I mean, these guys are NC Central. You're not going to face a whole lot of those types of dudes in the MEAC. This guy's special. He really is. And I give him a lot of credit for coming back, because I think it's going to make him an even more valuable commodity come next year's draft. He has improved every year he's been here. I think having 2 years with Chris Mack is a huge benefit to him. But he's 6'7", 225, perfect size for that next level.
Third largest scoring jump in the entire country, from 5 as a freshman to 17 as a sophomore. And really the sky seems to be the limit for him this year. He was asked whether he would have voted for himself as the ACC preseason player of the year, and he said, I absolutely would have. Which you like to hear. He put in the work. He's a confident young man. First look at Fresh Kimball, who's a grad transfer from St. Joe's, came on to augment the backcourt. Wara just off the mark, and Eagles come away. McMahon reaches in on Blunt.
McMahon last year was picked on a little bit on that defensive end. He'd come in, teams would go right after him. I think he's improved. I mean, just watching in the early going here, I think he's better on that end, but it's an area where he's going to have to continue to fight, especially if he wants to stay on the floor.
through the Patino years and transitioning into David Padgett, and even further back than that, when you think Louisville defensively, you always think of pressure and steals and deflections and real aggression on the defensive end. Chris Mack came here, simplified, and changed their whole thing. That pack line defense has really worked.
Well, it's not an easy defense to pick up. You know, Max saying that last year was like trying to teach calculus to a team that needed basic math first, which I relate to. I never really got basic math, quite honestly. But, I mean, the pack line is not easy to pick up. There are rules with the defense. It's a disciplined defense. But as we've seen, it is a winning defense. Virginia runs the pack line. A lot of teams run it. But one of the things I love about Chris Mack is he's an outstanding teacher. And I think he's been able to combine the way he's approached this group, coaching the experienced and the guys who have been around college basketball, combining that with the tone he's used with some of his younger guys.
You know, you and I see a lot of practices, a lot of shoot-arounds. I was so impressed with what he did today. Wara onto the deck. And Louisville will keep the ball. The messaging, Chris, the way that he distills the things that matter most to him, his intensity, his connection with his players. I came away from that shoot-around watching Chris Mack knowing exactly why he got this job and why he's been successful.
And he's moving well. Knee replacement in the offseason. Seems like the rehab took. He's moving well.
Kimball, too strong with a three. Louisville maintains it. A lot of contact and a late whistle as Wara bumped on the baseline. You know that drove Chris Mack crazy, not being able to move throughout all of that rehab this summer. Just thinking about the 2-6 close to their year, the first-round ouster in the NCAA tournament. He was sort of on his back thinking a lot about what was to come in this year.
Nice pass.
Wara, too easy in the corner.
You know, that's really good offense. And you know, Mac telling us today, we've hit perimeter shots. And we're going to make some of these shots against some of the teams we've played early here. We've got to make sure that the perimeter shots we're taking are good shots within our offense. That was an outstanding shot. A good pass there.
Having Claiborne finishes for the Eagles to get them back within 7. Yeah, to your point, Chris, fresh Kimball. It's the way of college basketball these days. Grad transfers are the coin of the realm as Wara just a little bit off with another triple. You get old quickly, and they bring Kimball over, a 3-year captain at St. Joe's, and he just really facilitated to Wara in the corner. But they've been pleased with what he's brought into their backcourt. Will take a breather, and the freshman Sam Williamson off the bench. McDonald's All-American, number 10 in white. We will highlight him. He has really impressed everybody in this program. Ty Graves, speaking of transfers, no good. And an offensive rebound for Claiborne, but cleaned up there from the man they call Irish Hulk, Aiden Igeha. Corner triple for Dwayne Sutton.
I love Dwayne Sutton. There is not a coach in America who would not take Dwayne Sutton on their team. He's a winner. He's a warrior. And the thing I love about him, you would never know if his team is up 10 or down 10. He just, his expression never changes. He competes. He doesn't care about his stats. I love that dude.
Yeah, so does Chris Mack. He says he is the ultimate team player, has everything you want, and he legitimately thinks that if Sutton has ever looked at a stat sheet, Chris has not seen it. He puts a couple more on the sheet with that up and under.
I'm telling you, he's one of the most underrated players in the country. Dwayne Sutton, with what he does, he stuffs a stat sheet. He's got a great winning attitude.
He does indeed. More for Sutton and the Cardinals.
Well, they're, as a team, Louisville shooting 54% from the field on the season. They are right on that mark here in this first half. Already 4 threes, and they've all been quality looks. You know, nothing really forced.
You may not have done calculus, but even you can do the 4 for 8.
Well, so what is that? 60%? What are we talking here?
It's good, is what it is. We'll stay in that pack line defense, everything in front. They're daring North Carolina Central to try threes. They get an opportunity for Randy Miller Jr. Louisville comes away with it.
Yeah, we talked about the experience of Louisville. They've got 5 fifth-year seniors, which for a high major program this day and age, 5 fifth-year seniors, that's a large number. And there's not a lot of transfers. I mean, most of them are guys who redshirted here. They've been in the program.
And they get some credit for hanging around as Williamson called for an offensive foul, a little bit out of rhythm.
And then there's the freshman. Williamson, one of the highly regarded freshmen coming in. So they've got 6 freshmen as well. I mean, that's where the experience combined with the new guys. There's the ball reversal. And I don't know about that one.
No.
That, to me, was not a legal guarding position.
Williamson has drawn rave reviews. I was stunned to learn that he's the 3rd highest ranked recruit. Say what you want about those services and the numbers and the rankings, but for a program as great as Louisville has been, he's the 3rd highest ranked recruit in the history of this program.
The thing I love about him is he's played with other good players. I mean, he played on the 8th ranked high school team in the country last season. So he understands how to be around other good players, how to fit in.
That's pretty strong for Miller.
Finish.
And don't you think, Chris, that in the era of the one and done, the freshman, that for a guy like Williamson, it's almost a perfect setup. He doesn't have to be the star right away. He can come off the bench and ease himself into this level.
I think the biggest benefit, especially being with older guys, is he can learn how to work. You know, like Chris Mack saying, one of the things that Sam Williamson has to learn is how to practice hard. You know, he's never been asked to have a motor, especially in practice. And he said that his older players, it frustrates them at times, which I relate to. I mean, when you got freshmen who come in and they don't understand how to practice hard and how to prepare. But he's got a really nice pass.
Enar flushes it home. Do you relate to that because as a freshman you did not know how to practice?
Yeah. And then conversely, when I was an upperclassman, it's frustrating.
I think that tells you a lot about the character of this team, that they are accountable to one another. That was a blown assignment and a 2-hand slam for Claiborne.
Tell you what, Claiborne, he's a heck of an athlete. The transfer from Cleveland State. He also has been hurt, but you can see the type of athlete he is.
Well, Moten sort of sent a message to him a little bit today by not giving him the start, needing more from him, and I think he's responded nicely. There's Perry.
Ooh.
How did he finish that?
What a finish. And what a revelation he's been at the point position. A guy who at times would hang his head when things weren't going well. He's come back more mature, and he's really taken a hold of that point guard position for them.
Trying to lock down Jordan Perkins. And Chris Mack says that Darius Perry is so much more fun to coach this year than last. He's really bought in. That is a wild move down the lane for Miller. And Wara is really frustrated with that call. Been a lot of Wara, a lot of Sutton, and NC Central trying to hang around.
Exchanging dunks here. What a beautiful.
Early 12-point lead. He's having a chat with the officials, dinged for a couple fouls. 8 points. Not a typical shooting evening so far for him, Chris, but the ball has really gone through him consistently.
As it should.
Miller and Perkins into the corner. There is the first triple to fall for Randy Miller Jr.
Well, and Williamson, the freshman, helping off that strong side corner, and that's a know your personnel scouting report deal. You can't leave Miller. I mean, that's what he wants to do and has done well so far this season. You can't be that far off, even on the penetration.
And McMahon gives it away. Good hands for you, Chris.
It's a firm grip. Loose ball, man. I'm on it.
Beautifully done. This guy right here, eager to field that turnover. You know, it's interesting. McMahon has really come such a long way. That was a little bit out of control. Point guard play with the departure of Kristen Cunningham was a big question coming for Louisville. That's why they went and got Fresh Kimball, the transfer. You've talked about Perry, his maturation as Graves, another BC transfer, misses for the three. But Perry and Co.'s got the ball right now. Point guard play is going to be real key.
It is. There's no question about it. Now, the thing about Chris Mack's offense,
Man draws a foul.
is they don't run a whole lot of ball screen stuff. It's like the whole world has gone to ball screen action. They go to their flow game. There is a much more of a sharing of it. There's going to be ball reversal. It'll see both sides of the floor. And so there's not an onus put on the point guard to create off of that ball screen. But it's nice having a junior in Perry and then a fifth-year guy, a grad transfer in Kimball, who, by the way, committed to Louisville without visiting. It's good to have those types of guys running your team at that position.
We're going to take another break. This kid, Ryan McMahon, basically has a spot at Louisville because of Dick Vitale. Not an exaggeration. Dickie V was his #1 champion, showed his high school recruiting video to everybody that would listen, including Rick Pitino and his assistants. And Pitino offered him a scholarship, and he has really blossomed here.
Well, he could shoot, and he could change a game with his shot in an instant. I mean, you go back to that Miami game that opened the year. They got off to a slow start in that game. Everybody looked at the score and thought that Louisville whooped up on them, which they did. But what turned that game around early was Ryan McMahon hitting 3 threes.
In transition, nearly a slam for Blunt, but nice recovery on the backside for Sutton. And Miller can't find it. Now the intensity for NC Central heating up a little bit here. Tomorrow after Monmouth and Pittsburgh, the All-ACC team will have the latest scores, news, and information from around the conference. Nobody covers the ACC like we do. 9 Eastern right here on the ACC Network and the ESPN app.
At Pittsburgh the other night against West Virginia. Good first half from them. West Virginia put it on them in the second half. There's so much put on those guards, Xavier Johnson, Trey McGowans, and they're really talented.
Enoch can step out and knock down shots. And once again, Bob Huggins has got some super impressive young talent in the front court.
He's got a freshman. If you haven't seen West Virginia yet, he's got a freshman named Oscar Shibwe from the Congo, who in the game I did the other night had 20 and 17.
Blunt going to work, and how about the glue guy, Dwayne Sutton, doing it all.
I love that dude. I'm telling you, what a rebound. Nice. Good decision.
Wow, step back for Enoch.
You know, Enoch transferred from UConn, and I remember doing a UConn game a few years ago when Enoch was there. And Kevin Ollie didn't play him at the time. And are we going to break? I'll tell the story on the other side. Let's
Save
do
it,
our
Chris.
break.
More after this. Louisville by 13. All of America waiting on bated breath for the punctuation of Chris Patola's story. Louisville leading by 13. So back to Enoch at UConn.
Oh, Kevin Ollie didn't play him. He's 6'10", 250. And you'd watch him practice, and he was pretty productive in practice. And I remember saying to Kevin Ollie after the practice, why don't you play this kid Enoch? Blocked there by Sutton. And he said, oh, he's not ready yet. And, he's not quite there. And sure enough, he transfers. Ollie gets fired, and this kid's going to be a pro. I mean, I love Steven Enoch. He's a monster. And when he plays hard, he gets good position. He's got a chance to be really good.
We all waited for that. Dwayne Sutton filling up the stat sheet, and they say it hit the baseline. I'm not so sure.
What a block that was. So you didn't like my story, is what you're saying?
I mean,
well, I mean, the point is, you know,
the point of a teaser is a little payoff, Chris.
Well, if you're Kevin Ollie, play the good players in your program, and maybe you'd still have a job.
No kidding. If you're good enough for Louisville, as they turn it over once again, does North Carolina Central. Lost track of the shot clock. He's playing big minutes and important minutes here for Louisville.
You know, Lavelle Moten, in order to shorten the possessions in this game, or shrink the possessions, wanted to start their offense, look to score with about 15 seconds on the shot clock. The problem is you may run out of time.
They did there as Enoch going to turn it over. You know, one of the things that's so challenging about playing this Louisville team, Chris, you can shorten the game all you want. You can try to limit possessions, but it is their offensive efficiency. So far this year, they've had 2 games where they've scored 1.5 points per possession. It's just preposterous efficiency on offense.
It is. There's no doubt about it. Again, the competition hasn't been great. We're going to learn a lot more about Louisville come December when the schedule ramps up significantly. But you still got to make those shots.
Ty Graves does not make, and Enoch cleans it up. November should be a breeze for the Cardinals, and then when the calendar turns to December, it gets real. Man misses. Williamson cleans it up. And they count the basket, saying he was fouled on the way up.
And that's the kind of effort play that Chris Mack is going to love. He didn't have to have a play called for him. They didn't throw it to him on the wing. He went and made a play. He's going to
So Williamson to go to the free throw line to try to complete the three-point play. Louisville shooting it well early. They've doubled up the Eagles, and Williamson cleans it up. As if playing the #4 ranked team in the country was not challenge enough, Lavelle Moten just has not been able to get his regulars on the floor. They've not operated together enough in practice. I think some of that lack of time on the floor together has shown here tonight. Strong on the boards. Really nice look into the corner. Sutton for 3.
It's just good basketball. It's a great find by Kimball. And the spacing on the weak side was outstanding by McMahon, and then Sutton, who ends up with the ball.
You know, Chris Mack said rather emphatically after the win over Indiana State, you can look at Fresh Kimball's start to the season in one of 2 ways. The first is offensively, he's not produced the way he had hoped, but all the other elements, he's been a real steadying force. He's distributed it, and he hasn't turned it over. And how about that going up top for a big-time defensive rebound?
Well, he's coming off his best game so far in a Louisville uniform, especially defensively. He was outstanding in that win over Indiana State. There was a toughness that I think you're waiting to see from this Louisville team that I thought they established in that Indiana State game, and a lot of it had to do with Fresh Kimball. He was excellent on the defensive end.
Extra fresh. He's the only player in St. Joe's history to be the captain of that team for 3 years. He comes in with a pedigree. He's not intimidated by this environment.
You know how much pressure it must be to have the nickname Fresh? People shout stale at me when I walk through a building.
You didn't look too stale today between shoot-arounds, knocking down some jumpers, working on your game, and no opportunity unused.
Gotta keep the game stale. For me is a lot to live up to.
I mean, that number and name that applies a little bit to the Enoch story, but we get fresher as the broadcast goes on. Sutton can't get there in time to prevent C.J. Kaiser from getting one off the window.
Another transfer, Kaiser from Wichita State.
Stemmed a 12-0 run for Louisville as Enoch has looked really impressive at the post.
I'm telling you, folks, he came on middle to end of last season, and folks know who he is. I think he's poised for a big-time year. He's a pro. He's got pro size, and you see the patience in the post. Caught it in a good spot, goes to that jump hook.
In almost every mock draft you look at, he'll come away with it here. He's projected in the first round. Pretty good dish to Sutton underneath. Now that's not part of the scouting report on Enoch, but a little grin with a no-look pass. They're starting to get it rolling here. Miller too strong, and a foul on the floor. But both Enoch and Wara projected sort of near the end of the first round, and Enoch in transition.
Well, and I thought he was going to throw it up top to Sutton. Instead, he drops a little bounce dime for Sutton, which was actually the better play. He's got point guard instincts at 6'10", 255.
He also already has 2 degrees. He's an undergraduate. He locked up a graduate degree in communication. He's a super impressive young man. And for anybody who caught the game that was probably the highlight of Louisville's season a year ago, beating North Carolina, he was the star of that game for Louisville. 17 and 11 that night, so it's in there for him. He can at times look like the best player on the floor, and I think tonight he has.
Couldn't get off the bench at UConn though. I mean,
you had it right, Stale, as Miller to the basket.
Very critical of my story. First of all, I was going to tell it before the break. Central called a timeout. And so we had to tease a pretty mundane story, apparently. Lay off.
We got a whole second half to make up for it as Darius Perry knocks one down at the top of the key. Darius Perry gives Louisville their largest lead at 24. One last possession for North Carolina Central. Suffocating D. Eagles will keep it for one last shot. Well, a first half that has gone, I think, basically as we expected. Maybe not as clean at times for Louisville, but the numbers, the score, sort of right where you expected it. Over the top, and to end the first half, it rattles out for Jabri Blunt, and the Cardinals close the first half on a 19-4 run. Over the last 5:41, shooting it well is Louisville, and they are all over North Carolina Central. A 24-point lead at the half. Halftime show 8-0 or better. They really score in spurts. On the other side, they lock you down for minutes at a time. 7 times they have held an opponent off the board for 3 minutes or longer. So that's a pretty formidable combo for Chris Mack. C.J. Kaiser gets the start in the second half. A different look from Moten. And Miller loses control, but the Eagles will keep it.
This is an area, too, where Chris Mack probably told his team at the half, with a lead like this, stay in character, stay to our habits. Don't do anything out of what you would normally do just because we're up big. And you assume it's an opportunity also where he's going to be able to go into his bench and get some of these younger guys some more experience.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this portion of the schedule. They've got so many new faces. They do have the veteran leadership, a lot of returnees, but we will see the bench empty here in this second half. Enoch almost throws it down, but fouled on the backside from Watley.
Post play is about where you catch it and the angle you have. And here, NC Central trying to front him. It's going to be hard for Justin Watley at 6'8" to front Stephen Enoch, especially when he's that deep. Now, that was a wonderful pass, but he camps right in front of the rim.
It would appear that in addition to staying in character, Chris Mack said, guys, this one's not that hard. Let's go to the big fella inside.
Yeah.
Jordan Perkins will walk it up the floor. Kaiser, 22 in black, the Wichita State transfer. Lavelle Moten thinks he's a super important part of their success this season, particularly once they get into that MEAC schedule as Watley knocks down a triple. I thought that what he said about Kaiser was particularly interesting, that he came in thinking a transfer from a bigger program, he kind of needed to be their savior. And Lavelle says, just do your thing one play at a time.
Well, let's be honest. He averaged 1 point a game at Wichita State, which is 1 point more than my son, who's at home, averaged for Wichita State last year. And my son is 9. You know what I mean? So, like, okay, right. You were at Wichita State, but now you're here, and you're coming to a program with a winning DNA. I mean, the success that Lavelle Moten has had in getting this program to the NCAA tournament speaks for itself.
He really embraces the challenge there, makes him a great fit as Miller misses a triple. Good work on the offensive board for Blunt. Active is Jabri Blunt, a chance at an N1. Lavelle Moten has had opportunities to go other places. His story is so fascinating to me. Talking to him, you can understand why he's a good fit at North Carolina Central. A guy who himself had an opportunity to go get a assistant coaching job when he tried to join the ranks. He turned that down. It was an $85,000 a year offer to go to Delaware State. He went and coached in middle school for $225 a month, and here he is, having gotten North Carolina Central to 3 straight NCAA tournaments.
A Hall of Famer at North Carolina Central, was a great player. Over 1,700 points there.
He's not going to stop fighting and coaching on the sideline as Miller misses a 3. And there's your guy, Sutton, skying for the board.
And I will say this, I live in that area. He is a great representative in the Research Triangle, in that Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area.
They've got the magic figured out in their conference tournament as Perry from downtown. Perry, the junior from Marietta, Georgia, is trying to light the candle a little bit here, keep the Cardinals engaged. They now lead by 22.
Digging the new Cardinal logo in the middle of the floor. Retro is in.
Throw back to the Crum years here at Louisville as Wara strips it. Looking for too much in transition, and Perry going to get called for the foul. This group, this team has gotten a chance, Chris, to do what they did in those years when that center court insignia was splashed across their jerseys.
They do, and you know, again, let's not forget, Malik Williams has yet to play. I think he's one of the best defensive big men, not just in the league, but in the country. David Johnson, who is incredibly talented. Chris Mack raving about him during the shoot-around today. He comes back, and both of those guys practiced with the team today. They were warming up with the team before the game, so those guys are both close.
A left-handed 3 for Jordan Perkins. Yeah, speaking of David Johnson, it was almost in reverential tones. Chris Mack, a local kid who was a superstar in this area. He said of Johnson, he's a freak athlete, but he doesn't play basketball like one. And he meant that as a compliment, that he really knows how to play the game, and so does Wara with a right hand.
And how about the pass from Stephen Enoch? The big fella has put the full arsenal on display today.
Isn't that sort of what you're talking about too, Chris? The way they run their offense, that Mack has catered it to their personnel. Less ball screens, more movement away from the ball, and it really works to free North.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons they're averaging 17 assists a game early in this season.
It's a coach's dream. Bigs and guards who can all share the basketball. They can shoot it, they can share it. Louisville doing a little bit of everything. They lead by...
I didn't think I had any fears. I am now afraid of being infested by ants. That sounds miserable.
And North Carolina Central fearing Sutton, the two-hand flush.
You got to love Darius Perry today. His body language has been good. He's been a leader at the point guard position, and a great find there of Sutton, who just ran the middle of the floor.
Thus far, Perry, the best assist to turnover ratio in the ACC. It's early, but that is an encouraging sign for a kid who at times has been a little bit out of control and out of the context of the offense.
How about Justin Watley? Not bad for a guy who has hardly practiced for them. 2 threes here in the second half. Nice.
Enoch active again. Yeah, Watley's got 9 points, Chris, and that tells you a lot that he doesn't have to practice every day to be effective. He's an impressive looking kid. Kaiser, a little teardrop.
That's a pro. Just a jab step. Defense gave him some space, and he just buries it right in his face. But here's that fast break play a moment ago. Dwayne Sutton streaking down the middle of the floor. The find from Darius Perry. High percentage.
Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, 4 Eastern. Then these Louisville Cardinals host Akron. Both games right here on ACCN and the ESPN app.
Anyone who has not seen Sabrina Ionescu needs to tune in. She is the Zion Williamson of women's basketball. I'm being serious. She is an unbelievable watch.
Unstoppable.
Some may say. I mean, look at this. Going to finish her career with probably, you know, over 900 assists. Already over 2,000 points. I mean, it's a heck of a career.
I think it's great for the women's game that the top-ranked team and the best player in the country is not in Storrs, Connecticut.
Because UConn women's basketball is bad for, is that what you're saying? Or are you giving us that Bob Ryan, Dan Shaughnessy take?
I am definitely not, but a little bit more. It's not yet parity, but spread the love a little bit is good for the game.
Yeah, you're right about that.
It's a little more interesting. Of course, the last several years, some dramatic results in that Final Four. UConn has not been as unbeatable. As foul going to be called going down the lane. Lavelle Moten is a fun guy to talk to, and he embraces the challenge at North Carolina Central. He has friends throughout the coaching ranks. He works with USA Basketball. John Calipari is a close friend of his, and I thought that Lavelle relayed some advice to us about what Coach Cal said to him as he has weighed some other opportunities that have come his way. He said, Lavelle, what you need to do is treat North Carolina Central like your next job. He said, that's what I did at UMass and at Memphis and at Kentucky, and that's pretty good advice for a guy who was a great player at North Carolina Central. He has really fit the mold.
When he's in a great area right there in Durham. He's got Coach K right in that city. You got Kevin Keats up the road in Raleigh. You got Roy Williams in Chapel Hill. And that job at Central's not easy. I mean, there's turnover year to year. We've talked about the transfers he has in his program this year. There's a transient nature to that program, which makes it even more remarkable the success he's had in getting that program to the NCAA tournament.
He's got a really good mantra. The standard is the standard. His mission is to play the game the right way, to play hard. He says he runs their program the way his grandmother ran her house as he was growing up as a kid, which is pretty no-nonsense, but at the same time, remember, this thing's supposed to be fun. It's a game, after all, as Wara on the offensive glass puts it back.
What a rebound by Wara.
Moten's got some Chris Mack ties. His nephew, Des Wells, played for Chris at Xavier, so those two have developed a long-standing good relationship as Miller is hammered going down the lane. But you know this, Chris. The coaching fraternity is a small place. There are so many interwoven relationships. And Lavelle, for a guy who is at a program that is not on the national radar, at least not until March, you can understand why so many at the highest end respect him. Did not love that call, and he'll start to go to the bench as Aiden Ingehan, the Irish Hulk. Look at that figure coming onto the floor as a freshman.
A freshman. They are not coming in like they used to. They used to be able to walk into a gym and you could point out the freshmen right away by their body type. Some people look at me and they still think I'm a freshman in high school. But I'm telling you what, I mean, these freshmen now, go back to Zion Williamson last year, freshman. Ingehan, freshman with those bodies. It's unbelievable.
I mean, he's a monster, Ingehan. We'll focus on him in a minute. He didn't start playing basketball in Ireland until he was 12 years old. He came stateside. He's raw, but the upside is almost undeniable. Chris Mack says we're going to take it one day at a time and be patient with him, but they think he can really contribute on this team. Speaking of young contributions, nearly 3 ball for Williamson. That's an offensive foul. Easy call as Blunt pushed off. Wara, one of the elder statesmen on these Louisville Cardinals, they lead by 22. Back inside the Yum Center, Will Fleming and Chris Spatola. And Chris, Louisville started out hot from the field, and they have just kept on shooting the basketball.
I mean, look at those percentages. They're shooting 54% on the year as a team. Those numbers are going to go up. That number is going to go up. And I think the other thing you love is they've got 15 assists tonight on their 22 field goals. They've shared it. They've gotten really good looks, and it's a big part of the reason they're shooting a high percentage. Some of the young faces on the floor for Louisville at the moment. Wara remains in there, but we would not expect, Chris, that number 33 in white is going to be long for this game. With the win in the back, you just want to get your number. You know, this is how players think. I'm telling you, you just want to get your number. So, you know, he's averaging 20, 21 a game. He's at 15. You just want to get your number before the coach pulls you. That's how guys think. He knows it's coming. Williamson. You can see the tools in that young man's arsenal. Yes, he is a very good player on the offensive end. I think Chris Mack expects more as he grows on the defensive end. But he can really score. He's trying to get to his number, though he'll stay in this game, you can figure. With that bucket, Williamson with 4 points, averaging 11 this season off the bench in a 6-man role. I thought Fresh Kimball was super impressive, controlling and running the offense in the first half. And Williamson off the side of the backboard. Was he fouled? Yes, he was. Well, that's where, you know, we've talked about how good Louisville is now. That's where there is a real high ceiling as well, because there's 7 new guys on this Louisville team, 6 freshmen and Fresh Kimball. And so how much those secondary guys, those guys off the bench, develop. You know, outside of Kimball, they're very young off of their bench. But as those guys but they're talented. Yep. You know, we talked about Williamson. I think Ingehan has a chance to get better. David Johnson, when he comes back, is really talented. Those guys are only going to get better, which means this team only gets better. I mean, you're exactly right. This is the season of optimism for everybody, right? I mean, you can project on just about everybody. This time of year, they're thinking, if this happens and this guy continues to improve, man, we could really make a run. But it's different with Louisville because of the pedigree that's already here and the depth of the upside that is there in the younger ranks. It is not just lip service, and there is Ingehan sending it back. Would you call him the Irish Hulk? He made like the Incredible Hulk on this one. Almost tore his jersey off. That one's halfway back to Dublin. That was beast mode. Wara's had about 3 of those today, almost misses on the contest.
That's got to thrill Chris Mack. Leading by 24, suffocating deep.
Well, that's where he's hungry to score. We've seen him offensive rebound today. We've seen him get out in passing lanes, try to make a play to get some points on the other end. Again, you're not always going to have a play run for what a pass.
The slam for Iguehan will not count. They're going to call a foul on the floor. I think Williamson kind of moving to set him free.
Talk about the balance on this team. That's where you got to be. You want to score. You got to be hungry. You got to find ways, other ways besides just having your number called.
If you put my shoulders inside Iguehan's, you'd have about 3 feet to spare on either side. He is a monster. And going to be called for a foul there. Not a lot of contact, kind of a late whistle, but Iguehan popped for the foul. I mean, look at that dude. Chris Mack says we can all admit that he's not been playing hoops that long. He's not quite ready to compete at the highest ACC level, but this is the kind of situation where you can get him some valuable minutes and closer to being ready for the Dukes and the Carolinas of the world. For all the good things he's done, that was not exactly artistic from Claiborne at the free throw line. Under 10 to go, and Louisville, a little bit of an offensive standstill. They've not scored in a few possessions here.
That would qualify as a standstill in this game.
Lit it up. Or a bumped, and he'll go to the free throw line to get a little bit closer to his number.
Wara spent the summer playing with the Nigerian national team. His dad was the head coach, and we were talking to him about the experience, which was great for him. I think it's made him even better. We were asking him about playing for his dad at the media day, ACC media day, and he said he was so hard on me that at times guys on the team would have to talk to my dad about like just taking it a little bit easier. But that team, they qualified for the Olympics, which is so awesome. And it was a great experience competing internationally for Jordan Wara as he goes out of the game and Dwayne Sutton checks back in.
Sutton and Josh Nickelberry, the freshman from Fayetteville, North Carolina, come on to the floor. Do you think that's the last we'll see of Wara, or maybe one more short spurt?
See another stint.
Good time to get him out with 9:30 to go in this second half, and Louisville well in control. And Miller meets the Irish Hulk, and a little too strong off the window. In the same way, I think, Chris, that it can sometimes be hard to gauge just how good a team like Louisville can be against an opponent like North Carolina Central, as Kimball splashes that one home. I think similarly, we came into this game talking about Randy Miller and Perkins and some of the other nice pieces that North Carolina Central has. They are going to be super effective in the MEAC. Tonight is not a reflection on the kind of year they can have. Sutton swats it off the window, but he'll be called for contact.
Dwayne Sutton. Play is never over. It's definitely a foul. Sutton so tough, so physical.
I like it when guys, no matter what, are upset when fouls get called on.
You like that?
He's a competitor. I guess all within reason, right? When you murder a guy and you're saying, what, that wasn't a foul. But that one, you know, that was a sort of a
that was a foul.
60-40.
That was a foul, Will. I don't know what you're watching.
Let's just say I like that better than the guy who immediately puts his hand up and walks meekly back toward the bench. That was me.
You're probably a guy who loves the soccer dudes who act like they've been shot as they go to the ground.
You know, my favorite part of that is that the trainers come out with the spray. You know, it's like the little spray bottle of water, and they put it right on the knee or the ankle, and somehow, mysteriously, magically, they leap up and they're totally healed. I hate that, for the record. Both the spray and the flopping. But I don't think that's quite what Dwayne Sutton is doing. Kimball at the free throw line, trying to get the Cardinals to the 70 mark. And he does. Ryan McMahon will replace Kimball. As we look at Chris Mack and Dino Gaudio, one of his trusted assistants, who recruited A1 Chris Spatola to West Point.
Dino Gaudio recruited me to West Point. I end up going to West Point. He ends up leaving to take another job. So I'm like Will Smith in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the final episode, standing in the room. I'm wondering where Dino Gaudio is.
He was your Uncle Phil?
He's the best. I love Coach Gaudio. He got me to one of the best institutions in the world. Are we teasing another story?
We're going to tease another story in West Long Island, born and raised. We'll talk about Chris Spatola and Dino Gaudio next.
Saw a Michael Scott head floating around.
Now those are two things that don't necessarily go together.
Got a 30-point game. This place is raucous.
There's Chris Mack. I don't know whether Cal Drago could have ever fit in at Dunder Mifflin, but either way, they got all kinds of fatheads here inside the Yum Center. It is a spectacular environment here. Here we are. It's a Sunday evening. They're up 26, and the show production value inside this building has got to be seen to be believed.
Yeah. It's one of the best arenas in college basketball. There's no doubt about that.
And don't you think, Chris, that history has proven that when Duke and Carolina and UVA come in here, this place is going to be packed to the rafters, and it is a super intimidating place to come play.
Well, I was told today they repainted the floor. You got the block lettering on the baseline, the fleur de lis. It's the only French I know, other than bonjour. Got that bordering the Louisville, and then you got the new retro Cardinal in the middle of the floor, which is super cool.
C'est bon. Fleur de lis, the official symbol of the city of Louisville. It is an extremely hospitable place. The Cardinals not being real hospitable to North Carolina Central. A corner three for Devin Palmer does not fall. Things have gotten a little bit sloppy for the Eagles, you'd have to say, as Miller going down the baseline. He is fouled by McMahon. Does not love the call. Even though he gets called for the foul, Chris, don't you think that kind of defensive effort and the ability to at least stay in front of Miller is kind of what you're talking about, his progress as a defender?
Yeah, I mean, to stay on the floor with what Chris Mack demands, he has to be a consistent defender. Not going to be what he does best, but he can't be the guy that's consistently picked on.
And there's the man who landed the biggest fish of all.
There he is. He did a great job. You know, he recruited me there. I ended up there in 1999, which is pre-9/11. 9/11 happened my senior year, but he recruited me there, did a great job, sold West Point, which is not an easy place to sell. He sold my parents. I told him he recruited my parents just as hard as he recruited me.
Enoch with a right.
And I wish I had had a chance to play for him.
Yeah.
So he gets me to West Point, and then And of course, he was a coach in the ACC when I was on Coach K's staff at Duke. He was at Wake Forest, did a great job there. Should have never been fired. One of the most disastrous firings, really, that league has seen.
That did not add up. He was at Loyola in between West Point and Wake, as Miller does find the range. You know, here we are as Moten is going to call a timeout. Miller gets the Eagles back within 24, and I think this is another example of Lavelle Moten finding this as a teachable moment. The Huddle with Jack Collinsworth, Eric McClain, EJ Manuel, and Mark Rick will get you ready for ACC football like nobody else. They'll preview the weekend slate of games and keep you updated on all things ACC football. Live Friday at 8 Eastern and next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern right here on ACCN and the ESPN app. The band is fired up as Dino Gaudio and Chris Mack huddle their fellas together. Chris, here we are not long after Veterans Day, such an important day in our national calendar. When you were at West Point, your senior year after 9/11, I'm sure that the tenor of all of your competition, all of your events, took on a really different tone.
It certainly did. I mean, I never imagined that I would deploy and go to combat, and ended up doing that in 2005, 2006 to Iraq. But, you know, look, I didn't enjoy every day there, but I'm grateful to that gentleman there for believing in me and giving me the opportunity to be at West Point. And, boy, am I grateful every day for being from there.
That's McMahon, a little victory belt Aaron Rodgers celebration to cap off a deep triple. I don't think that you were pulling a lot of that at West Point as he draws an offensive foul, does McMahon.
Now that's a discount double check right there. Taking the charge after the three. Ryan McMahon.
He does not lack for confidence. That much is clear. Yeah, you might not have loved every day being there, Chris, but being from there has defined you as a man. As McMahon tries to go back to back. Now, I don't think that maybe at West Point they probably would have predicted that you would be on national television wearing purple tennis shoes.
No. That's this is my rebellious face.
You earned it. All your years of wonderful service to our country. We thank you and everyone who's ever worn that uniform. You know, Veterans Day stands out on the calendar, but it is so important that we recognize everything that those people do so that we can be here today and every day to enjoy the many freedoms and joys we have as a far side jumper for Enoch will not fall. Thanks to you, Chris, and to everyone else who's worn that uniform. Getting a little bit out of the flow of the offense here on both sides. Josh Nickelberry for three.
You know, you and I spent a few minutes talking about Aiden Agahan and how physically impressive he is. I would just ask that people stop tweeting me pictures of him without his shirt on. Please. I get the point.
Yes. There was a Louisville team outing, Chris, at a paintball, event this summer, and that particular shot of him.
I'm okay with him in a tank top. I get the message. Stop tweeting me photos of him with his shirt off.
That'll make it a little harder tonight for both you and me to look in the mirror and do a little comparison. You know, Josh Nickelberry is not as highly heralded now as so many of these other young star freshman recruits. Chris Mack landed a top 10 recruiting class. They call them the Super Six. Nickelberry, who just knocked down that three, he was the first to commit, and he actually then started to act as a proxy for Chris Mack to get some of these other guys into the fold.
He scored over 2,900 points in high school. He's second in North Carolina history behind Kobe White, who left Carolina after a year and is now having a really good start with the Chicago Bulls.
That's heady company. Anytime you're in the top one or two in a great high school basketball state like North Carolina, you're in heady company. There are 4 of the Super Six. Chris Mack has got it going again for next year. You know, Kentucky, anytime you talk Louisville basketball, you can't ignore the other pole in this thing, and that, of course, is UK. They have themselves already landed 4 5-star guys for 2020. These things can change. A lot of people think Duke and Kentucky right now competing for the best class going into next year, but Chris Mack will be in on a lot of 5-star guys, and he'll land some more to play right here.
Coaching matters. It matters. That's why you hire a guy like that. I mean, you watch his practice today. It's sharp. It's precise. His team plays hard. They practice hard. They communicate. He demands of them, and they respond. He's hired a great staff. I mean, that's a big part of being good in college. It's a big part of that recruiting you're talking about. Coaching matters. And Chris Mack, this is not hyperbole, is one of the best doing it right now in college basketball.
Well, the numbers reflect it. You know, the anecdotal evidence does as well. But in his first 10 years as a head coach, 12th all time in wins, 235 wins against just 111 losses. And being around him, you talked about the way that Dino sold you and your parents on West Point. Can you imagine being a parent in a living room when that man walks in and paints a very compelling picture about Louisville? Consistently gets his teams to the tournament. Balance 3 for Graves. I think Lavelle Moten would like Ty Graves, the BC transfer, to be a little bit more in the rhythm of the offense. Show perhaps a little bit more of the polish you would have expected from a kid who spent time in the ACC. At this point, something of a work in progress as we get our first look at the bench. Into the post we go. And Williamson again. Quinn Slazinski, freshman, is out there wearing 11 in white, and he skies to the defensive glass to get the rebound, and a foul is going to be called on that play on Evan Claiborne. Not a lot there, but as it is, a 31-point Louisville lead. He's apparently not going to dial up the show Fleabag anytime soon. Yehan, about whom Chris continues to have his Twitter feed flooded with shirtless pictures. Enough, right?
Well, I gotta say, he's a very impressively built young man. You know, I could do without. I could do with less of photos of him with his shirt off, but it is impressive.
Quinn Slavinsky could not come away with that offensive rebound after Irish Hulk missed a couple free throws. Under 3 minutes with Louisville firmly in control. There is Slavinsky, and he is bumped and fouled. You know, Slavinsky's a kid who Chris Mack fully expected would redshirt this season. And then they started summer workouts, and he was so impressive that Chris said, oh, we got to change the plan. This kid can really help us this year.
Well, and especially with the schedule early, you know, you get an opportunity like tonight to get him in there, get him some burn, let him play. He's one of those guys. He's going to be in this program for a few years.
Here we say he's being treated tonight like something of a guinea pig. Misses both free throws. Yehan brought that one down too low. Slazinski and his parents have something of a sense of humor, Chris. Last year, he was named the top prospect in the Houston area as a high school senior. And for whatever reason, the hordes of the fandom in Houston basketball went crazy about that. They thought that there were players better than Slazinski, and so everywhere he went, he got booed, he got really heckled, and so his mom made T-shirts in the vein of a guy you know well, Christian Laettner, that say, I hate Quinn Slazinski. So they took a negative and flipped it into a positive and had a good time with it. And it looks like at the moment he's kind of getting the last laugh. not been an artistic affair the last several minutes.
The ends of 30-point games rarely are.
No question about that. And Chris Mack trying to get his young guys some minutes, and I think frankly at this point Lavelle Moten is trying to get his guys out of town in one piece.
They have been road warriors, North Carolina Central. They come into this game after having played Akron, 5-hour drive from Akron here. Started the year at Stephen F. Austin. Back home to Durham to play USC Upstate. So they've been around. They got to go to Youngstown State. Say that 5 times after this one. I mean, they are, as a lot of these mid-major teams do, they are all over the place.
Say it 5 times. How about 1? Then they're at Bluefield State, Southern Illinois, Wofford, and then they do have to go to Georgia. So to your point, they're going to be really on the road and tested. That is life in the MEAC in the preseason. Kimball has been very good tonight.
Yes, he has. And coming off his best game. So he's starting to get comfortable in a Louisville uniform.
This little teardrop to get Eagles back within 30, and Moten will call a timeout to get the subs in. He does not bring the players to the bench, and Kobe Itai comes in tomorrow after Monmouth and Pittsburgh in men's hoops. The All-ACC team will have the latest scores, news, and info from around the conference. Nobody covers the ACC like we do. 9 Eastern right here on ACCN and the ESPN app. Yehan, almost a chance at a 3-point play. They're feeding the big fella inside.
How about the 2 hires Louisville's made? Scott Satterfield on the football side and Chris Mack. Again, like, it gets back to my coaching matters.
Yes.
And when you hire the right people, you're going to win games. And they've hit with both of those hires. Who saw Louisville football doing what they've done? And we're talking about a Louisville basketball team that in year 2, after all that this program went through, that is going to be right there in a national championship hunt.
Yeah, they're way ahead of schedule in the turnaround. It mired in so much controversy, and people thought it would take several years. Not so. Surprising 20-win year last season for Chris Mack. You know, he talks a lot about coming into this season with Wara returning and Enoch and all of the young stars that came on campus. He calls the preseason hype and expectations poison, and he doesn't want his guys to believe in it, to drink that poison, and from what you've seen tonight, it surely appears that they have accepted that message.
Did he get that from Nick Saban?
Maybe so. If that's a pretty good guy to emulate, if so. Alabama, of course, will be without Tua for the remainder of the year. That looked awful. You hope that truly that doesn't impact not just this season, but his career, as Spatola comes away with his second basketball. Look at that West Point.
That's 2 loose balls tonight for Spatola. 2 of them.
Diving on the floor, all over the place. Getting high fives from the fans behind us.
Yes. These are my people. This time, or not this time, but this same seat last year when I decked Mike Cousins during a game.
Yeah, it was Muhammad Ali day. You had the gloves on. You just smoked him right in the face.
They did. They brought some boxing gloves over, and
so I need
you better
to
watch yourself
protect
out,
myself
man.
a little bit. God,
lay one on you.
Time for some walk-ons to get on the floor. Odo makes the free throw. Ruled by 31. I'm glad you didn't have access to the boxing gloves tonight. I think at some point, Chris, we all understand the integrity of the game, and you don't want to necessarily officiate totally differently, but in this sort of a situation with 66 seconds to go in a 30-point game, there have been some ticky-tack calls.
What are you saying, Will Fleming?
saying maybe swallow the whistles down the stretch.
Talk about pocket square game. How about Lavelle Moten tonight?
Very good.
Nigel Thomas there on his left, one of his, or his right, his assistant. Pocket square game for NC Central tonight is strong.
And coming from you, that means a lot. You got the lavender square yourself.
Takes swag to no swag.
Yeah. Are you worried about your Twitter feed?
I am. I'm also worried about him ripping off the backboard, and we have a 20-minute delay to replace the please.
You're right. That did look like Orlando Shaq. Whistle swallowed. Williamson defensive board. And one more look for Louisville. They go to the big fella. And a putback for C.J. Kaiser. Louisville will bounce the air out of the basketball. They have done what they came to do. In front of a big crowd on their home floor. Louisville has not lost a November home game in 28 years. That will not change tonight. Chris Spatola, it's been fun. Louisville did their job.
They took care of business. I mean, you said it. Game like tonight, you come in, you take care of business, you do what you're supposed to do, and the train continues to roll on for this Louisville team.
Have you changed your opinion at all? Still the best team in the ACC?
Yeah, I think so right now. And again, we'll find out a lot more about this team in December as the schedule ramps up. Right now, they're the best in the league.